The pristine, ovoid chamber of the Galactic Alliance Supreme Command hummed with the quiet efficiency expected of the most advanced military headquarters in known space. Holographic displays flickered, showing star systems, fleet movements, and various metrics that indicated the relative peace and prosperity the Alliance had maintained for generations. General Xyler of the Cathar species sat rigidly at the central table, his scaled fingers methodically tapping against the polished surface. His species was known for their strategic brilliance and cautious approach to potential threats. The four glowing eyes embedded in his elongated skull scanned the data streams with practiced precision. The quarterly security assessment shows no significant changes, he stated, his voice a controlled rasp. Minor piracy in the Outer Rim has decreased by 7% since our last deployment. Across from him, Dr. Eris nodded, her phalanxy features, delicate crystalline structures that refracted light in complex patterns, shimmering with approval. As the Alliance's foremost xenobiologist and theoretical physicist, she preferred hard data and demonstrable facts over speculation, especially when it came to biological impossibilities. The trade routes through the Cygnus Arm show increased profitability, added Admiral Zora, a robust Cygnian with iridescent skin that shifted colors with her mood, currently a satisfied blue-green. Our economic stability indicators are at a 5-cycle high. The three senior officers represented the core leadership of the Alliance, a cooperative venture of over 300 advanced species that had reached the stars and chosen cooperation over conquest. Their meetings were typically routine affairs, managing minor crises and celebrations of continued prosperity. That was about to change. A junior communications officer, a Telani with 6 limbs that moved with nervous energy, entered the chamber, their exoskeleton clicking softly on the floor. General Xyler, Admiral Zora, Dr. Eris, forgive the interruption, but we've detected anomalous energy signatures from Tartarus 7. The room fell silent. Tartarus 7 was a Class 7 disaster world, a planetary hellscape the Alliance classified as completely uninhabitable. With extreme radiation levels, a corrosive atmosphere, predatory flora and fauna evolved for maximum lethality, and unstable geology that resulted in continent-reshaping events on a monthly basis. No known species could survive there without extensive environmental suits, and even then, only for limited periods. Sensor malfunction, Dr. Eris dismissed immediately. The radiation alone would corrupt any reading. The communications officer shifted uncomfortably. We thought so too, Doctor, but the redundant systems confirm the readings. And there's more. They activated a small projector, displaying grainy imagery of the planet's surface. These were captured by the long-range telescopic array. The images showed what appeared to be artificial structures, crude, functional buildings anchored into the volatile landscape with massive supports. More disturbing were the blurry figures moving between them. Impossible, Dr. Eris whispered, her crystalline features darkening with confusion. No biological entity could survive those conditions without complete environmental isolation. General Xyler leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. How long have we been receiving these signals? 3 standard weeks, General. Initial reports were discarded as anomalies, but the pattern has become undeniable. Admiral Zora's skin rippled to a concerned amber. Could it be automated mining equipment? Perhaps abandoned by some unknown expedition? The communications officer hesitated. The movement patterns are too deliberate, Admiral, and there are thermal signatures consistent with biological life, not machinery. An uneasy silence descended over the room. The implications were disturbing on multiple levels. Not only was something surviving on Tartarus 7, but the Alliance's monitoring systems had potentially missed a significant development on their borders. I want higher resolution imagery, General Xyler ordered. Recalibrate the sensors and focus all available resources on that sector. With respect, General, the communications officer replied, we've already done so. This is the best we can achieve with our current technology at this distance. Admiral Zora's skin flashed a decisive red. "Then we need to get closer." Heated discussion erupted around the table. Dr. Eris argued passionately against the biological possibility of any species surviving on such a world without technology far beyond the alliances. General Zyler raised concerns about potential weapons development or some new, unknown technological breakthrough that could threaten Alliance security. Admiral Zora emphasized the need for concrete information before any conclusions could be drawn. "We cannot make strategic decisions based on grainy images and uncertain sensor readings," she insisted. After hours of debate, a consensus emerged. The Alliance would deploy their newest stealth reconnaissance vessel, equipped with the most advanced sensor array in their fleet, to Tartarus 7. Its mission: to observe, record, and return with definitive evidence of whatever activity was occurring on that hellish world. "This mission is classified at the highest level," General Zyler instructed as the meeting concluded. "Until we understand what we're dealing with, knowledge of these developments does not leave this room." As the officers dispersed, none of them could shake the growing sense of unease. Something impossible was happening on Tartarus 7, and the universe they thought they understood was about to change forever. The stealth reconnaissance vessel Silent Observer approached Tartarus 7 with extreme caution. Its hull was designed to absorb rather than reflect energy, making it virtually invisible to conventional detection methods. The small crew, composed of the Alliance's elite reconnaissance specialists, felt the tension mounting as they entered the outer atmosphere. "Shields at maximum," the pilot reported, voice tight with strain. "Environmental readings are extreme." Confirming Class 7 disaster classification. On the main viewer, Tartarus 7 revealed itself in all its nightmarish glory. The sky burned an angry crimson, shot through with bolts of unnatural lightning that carried enough energy to vaporize standard Alliance vessels. The landscape below was a chaotic jumble of jagged mountain ranges, vast chasms glowing with molten rock, and plains covered in vegetation that seemed to move with predatory intent. Activating full sensor suite, the science officer announced, recording on all frequencies. The vessel descended lower, using the planet's electromagnetic storms as cover. As they approached the coordinates where the anomalous readings had been detected, the crew fell silent in collective shock. Transmitting live feed to Supreme Command, someone whispered. Back in the command chamber, General Zyler, Admiral Zora, and Dr. Eris watched in stunned silence as crystal-clear imagery filled their holographic displays. What they saw defied all rational explanation. Humanoid figures, unmistakably bipedal with 2 arms, 1 head, and a familiar body structure, were moving across Tartarus VII's surface. They wore what appeared to be minimal protective gear, nothing like the fully sealed environmental suits that Alliance species would require. Some had what looked like simple breathing apparatus over their faces, but others appeared to be breathing the toxic atmosphere directly. Most shocking of all, they were training. "Is this some kind of military exercise?" Admiral Zora asked, her skin cycling through colors of disbelief and alarm. The footage showed groups of these beings performing what could only be described as organized physical training under conditions that should have killed them instantly. They ran in formation across fields where caustic rain fell, the droplets leaving visible burns on exposed skin that the beings simply ignored. They performed combat maneuvers in gravity that fluctuated wildly, one moment struggling against forces that should have crushed their bones, the next adapting to sudden weightlessness with practiced ease. "Focus on the southeastern quadrant," General Zyler ordered. The view shifted to show a particularly horrifying scene. A squad of these beings was engaged in what appeared to be hand-to-hand combat training in the midst of an acid storm. Their skin blistered and healed before the Alliance officers' eyes, a biological impossibility that Dr. Eris could only stare at in mute horror. "Their cellular regeneration rate is inconceivable," she finally managed. Another scene showed trainees navigating a terrain of unstable rock formations that collapsed beneath them without warning. Those who fell simply climbed back up, sometimes with broken limbs that they would roughly splint before continuing. One trainee was crushed by a massive boulder. Colleagues quickly removed the body, another took its place, and the exercise continued without pause. Most disturbing was what appeared to be predator evasion training. Tartarus Vii's native fauna included apex predators evolved for the extreme environment, massive, armored creatures with multiple hunting adaptations. The footage showed trainees deliberately attracting these monstrosities, then practicing evasion techniques. Some failed and were torn apart. Others succeeded, and in shocking displays of aggression, some even counterattacked the creatures using crude weapons or explosive devices. They're using the planet's natural hazards and predators as training elements, General Zeiler observed, his professional tone barely masking his horror. The silent observer continued its reconnaissance, capturing more footage that grew increasingly nightmarish. Trainees navigating through toxic fog with zero visibility, relying solely on other senses. Others crossing fields of geothermal vents that could erupt at any moment with superheated steam or lava. Some practicing weapons drills with devices that seemed unstable by design, occasionally detonating and taking the user's limbs or lives in the process. Throughout it all, the observers noted the trainees' demeanor, grim determination, occasional dark humor, and a disturbing indifference to injuries and deaths. Medical attention was basic at best, field dressings applied to wounds that would require extensive surgery for any Alliance species, followed by immediate return to training. When deaths occurred, bodies were efficiently removed and training continued without ceremony. "This isn't desperation," Admiral Zora said quietly. "This is deliberate, methodical. They're not just surviving this environment, they're using it as a forge." As the silent observer's transmission continued, the command chamber remained silent. Whatever species these beings represented, they had just upended the Alliance's understanding of biological limitations and military doctrine simultaneously. "Continue observation," General Zeiler finally ordered, his voice barely audible. "We need to know exactly what we're dealing with." But in his mind, a terrible question had already formed. If this was merely their training, what would these beings be like in actual combat? General Zeiler paced the length of the Supreme Command Chamber, his usual composure shattered. 2 standard weeks had passed since the initial reconnaissance of Tartarus 7, and each new report only deepened the crisis. "We've confirmed similar activities on 5 other Class 6 or higher disaster worlds," he reported to the expanded Emergency Council, which now included the highest military and scientific authorities from across the Alliance. Each planet presents a different type of environmental hell, and in each case, these beings are using the conditions as training grounds. Holographic displays showed the evidence. On Glacius Prime, a world of crushing gravity and temperatures that froze standard atmosphere solid, the beings conducted endurance marches across ice fields where a single fall meant instant death. On Vesuvian's moon, they used flowing lava rivers as obstacle courses, timing runs across cooling magma crust that could give way at any moment. On Hallucina, a jungle world where even the air contained paralytic and hallucinogenic compounds, they practiced resistance to chemical warfare without protection. "They call themselves humans," Dr. Aris said, pronouncing the unfamiliar word carefully. "We've managed to intercept some of their communications. They appear to be from a planet called Earth, though our records show no such world in our catalog systems." "How is this possible?" demanded the Kelvari High Commissioner, her bioluminescent appendages flashing with agitation. "No species we've encountered could survive such environments, let alone use them for military training. Their biology defies conventional understanding," Dr. Aris explained, her scientific detachment strained to its limits. "Preliminary analysis suggests they evolved on a world with highly variable conditions and extreme seasonal changes. Their adaptive capabilities exceed anything in our biological archives by orders of magnitude." Admiral Zora brought the discussion back to military concerns. "The tactical implications are severe. These humans are intentionally conditioning themselves to operate in environments we consider completely non-viable for combat operations. They're creating soldiers who can fight in conditions where our forces simply cannot function. The implications hung heavy in the air. Alliance military doctrine was built around the concept of controlled engagements in hospitable environments. Their ships, weapons, and tactics all presumed certain environmental parameters. If these humans could operate outside those parameters, traditional defensive strategies became obsolete overnight. We need to know their intentions, a Medusan delegate insisted, nervous acid dripping from his speaking orifices. Are they preparing for conquest? Do they know about the alliance? General Zeiler's 4 eyes narrowed. The pattern of activity suggests preparation for something beyond conventional warfare. The question is what? As discussions continued, the Council's fear crystallized around a new concern. If these were merely training exercises, what did their actual military forces look like? Were the battle-hardened veterans of these hellish training grounds forming an armada somewhere beyond Alliance space? What could stop beings who treated Tartarus 7 as a mere obstacle course? We need intelligence, General Zeiler decided. Not just observation, but infiltration. We need to understand their command, structure, technology, and most importantly, their intentions. From the shadows at the back of the chamber stepped a figure that seemed to shift and blur at the edges. Agent Kale, the Alliance's premier shape-shifting infiltrator. A member of the Morphari species, Kale's biological structure could temporarily mimic most humanoid forms, a talent that had made them invaluable in covert operations. I volunteer, Kale said simply, their form already subtly shifting toward a more human-like appearance. The mission parameters were established. Kale would infiltrate the Tartarus 7 facility, gather intelligence on the human's organizational structure, technology level, and strategic objectives, then extract and report back. With their biological mimicry and the Alliance's most advanced stealth technology, they stood the best chance of success. As preparations began, Admiral Zora approached Kale privately. This goes beyond standard infiltration risks, she warned, her skin a somber, deep blue. If their biology can withstand Tartarus 7 naturally, they may have sensory capabilities we don't understand. Be more careful than you've ever been. Kale nodded, already studying the human physical structure from the reconnaissance footage. When you've infiltrated as many hostile environments as I have, Admiral, you develop a sense for danger. But I appreciate the concern. 3 days later, Kale was deployed to Tartarus 7 aboard a stealth insertion craft. The landing was timed to coincide with one of the planet's frequent electromagnetic storms, using the natural interference to mask their approach. As the craft departed, leaving Kale alone on the hellish surface, the agent immediately felt the environment assaulting their mimicked human form. The air burned in their manufactured lungs. The gravity shifted unpredictably, making each step a calculation. In the distance, the human training facility loomed, a brutal utilitarian structure anchored to the unstable ground with massive supports. Kale began the approach, already fighting to maintain their biological disguise under the planet's assault. If the mission succeeded, the Alliance might finally understand what they were facing. If it failed, Kale pushed the thought aside. In a universe suddenly filled with new uncertainties, failure was not an option. Agent Kale moved through Tartarus Vii's lethal landscape with meticulous care, each step a battle against the environment and the limits of their shape-shifting abilities. The corrosive atmosphere continually damaged their mimicked human form, requiring constant cellular regeneration that drained their energy reserves at an alarming rate. What might have been a simple infiltration on any normal world had become an endurance test that pushed Kale to their biological limits. After navigating through fields of crystalline flora that erupted with poisonous spores when disturbed, Kale finally reached the perimeter of the human facility. Up close, the structure was even more impressive and disturbing than it had appeared in reconnaissance images. The buildings were constructed from materials that actively resisted the caustic environment, technology that the Alliance had never developed because no one had considered long-term habitation of such worlds worth pursuing. Slipping past the outer security measures proved surprisingly difficult. The humans employed both advanced technology, motion sensors, thermal imaging, and atmospheric composition monitors, and primitive but effective methods like trained indigenous predators that patrolled the perimeter. Kale was forced to time their movements between security sweeps, mimicking the gait and heat signature of the humans with perfect precision. Once inside, horror truly took hold. The training Kale witnessed exceeded even the nightmares suggested by the reconnaissance footage. In one chamber, human trainees stood in a sealed room where gravity was increased to crushing levels, performing weapon drills until blood seeped from their eyes and ears. When some collapsed, instructors simply dragged them aside, and the others continued. In another area, controlled environmental collapse was used as a training scenario. Cave-ins, flash floods of acid rain, and artificially induced sinkholes forced trainees to react instantly or die. The casualties were not insignificant, but those who survived showed a frightening increase in reaction speed and decision-making under pressure. Most disturbing was what appeared to be live-fire exercises using captured non-terrestrial organisms. Not the native fauna of Tartarus 7, but beings from elsewhere. Some resembled species known to the Alliance. Others were completely foreign. The humans used these captives as moving targets or simulated opponents, studying their movements and testing weapons against their various biological defenses. Kale recorded everything, fighting rising panic. This wasn't just military training. It was systematic preparation for combat against specific, non-human physiologies. The implications were chilling. The facility's psychological atmosphere was equally unsettling. The human trainees displayed a complex mixture of emotions. Fear was present, certainly, but overlaid with steely determination and a dark camaraderie forged in shared suffering. They joked about injuries that would hospitalize Alliance species for months. They commemorated fallen comrades with brief, almost ritualistic ceremonies before immediately returning to training with increased intensity. The instructors were perhaps the most terrifying of all, hardened veterans with bodies covered in scars or sporting mechanical replacements for lost limbs. They pushed the trainees beyond all reasonable limits, yet somehow knew precisely when a human would break permanently versus when they could be pushed further. As Kale moved deeper into the facility, they encountered increasingly secure areas. Using their shape-shifting abilities to mimic authorized personnel, they gained access to a command center where officers monitored training across multiple disaster worlds simultaneously. Tactical displays showed hundreds of similar facilities across planets the Alliance had written off as uninhabitable. This wasn't a rogue operation or a specialized unit. This was a systematic, planet-spanning program for creating soldiers who could fight in any environment in the galaxy. Then disaster struck. Passing through a security checkpoint, Kale encountered an unexpected scanner type, one that seemed to analyze cellular structure at a level their mimicry couldn't fool. Alarms blared as the disguise was flagged as non-human. Kale fled down a corridor, seeking an escape route, only to find themselves in a dead end, a private office occupied by a single human woman. She turned calmly as Kale burst in, revealing a face mapped with scars and eyes that held the cold calculation of a predator assessing prey. "I've been expecting one of you," she said in a voice roughened by years of breathing toxic atmospheres. "I'm Commander Eva Rostova, director of this facility, and you are clearly not human, despite your impressive attempt." Kale prepared for combat, but Rostova merely pressed a control on her desk. Energy fields activated around the room, creating an impenetrable barrier. "Don't bother shifting into something more combat-oriented," Rostova advised. "We detected your biological pattern the moment you entered our airspace. I allowed you to tour our facility because I wanted you to see." Trapped and exposed, Kale made the tactical decision to revert to their natural, more furry form. A translucent, fluid-like humanoid with visible neural clusters pulsing beneath a gelatinous exterior. "You knew I was here all along?" Kale asked, mind racing through escape scenarios. Rostova smiled thinly. We've encountered shapeshifters before. Different biology than yours, but similar concept. Your alliance isn't as invisible as you think. The revelation that humans knew about the alliance sent a chill through Kale's fluid form. Then these training grounds, you're preparing for war against us. Rostova's laugh was harsh. Your alliance? No offense, but you're not that important. What we're preparing for makes your civilization look like a minor concern. She activated a holographic display showing phenomena that made Kale's neural clusters pulse with primal fear. Massive, non-biological entities moving between stars. World being systematically disassembled by self-replicating machine swarms. Spatial anomalies that seem to devour light and matter alike. We evolved on a death world, Rostova explained. Earth makes Tartarus 7 look like a paradise. Our history is an endless cycle of extinction-level events. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, meteor impacts, plagues. Those that didn't kill us outright forced us to adapt or die. That's our species' superpower. We don't just survive, we become stronger through adversity. She paced around Kale, studying the alien form with scientific interest. These training grounds aren't to prepare for war with your kind. They're to prepare humanity for threats your alliance has never encountered or has chosen to ignore. Interdimensional incursions, rogue artificial intelligences operating at cosmic scales, natural phenomena that could sterilize entire galactic arms, and the fallout from our own past mistakes. Rostova's expression hardened. We're not creating soldiers. We're forging the survival capacity of our entire species. These hells are just the anvil. The hammer is coming, and your alliance isn't ready. Kale absorbed this information with growing dread. Why tell me this? Why let me leave with this knowledge? Because I want your leaders to understand what's at stake, Rostova replied. Humanity has fought alone for too long. We've seen what's coming. Your alliance has resources, technology, numbers. You might survive what's coming if you ally with us. Without us, I wouldn't bet on it. She deactivated the energy barriers. Take our message back to your command. We'll be in touch formally within 1 standard month. Consider carefully how you want to position yourselves in humanity's assessment, as potential allies or as collateral damage. As Kale was escorted to their extraction point by armed guards, the agent couldn't shake the unsettling realization that the humans had not only allowed their infiltration, but had orchestrated it as a demonstration of power. They wanted the alliance to see, to fear, and ultimately to submit to a new cosmic order with humanity as the hardened vanguard against apocalyptic threats. Whether Rostova's claims about greater threats were truth or manipulation remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The universe had suddenly become a far more dangerous place than the Alliance had ever imagined. The Supreme Command Chamber had never been so silent. Agent Kale's report, delivered in person and accompanied by the recorded evidence from Tartarus 7, had left the assembled leaders of the Galactic Alliance in stunned silence. The holographic displays showed Commander Rostova's revelations in vivid detail, cosmic horrors and existential threats that most had never considered possible. General Zyler was the first to speak, his voice unnaturally subdued. The authenticity of these threats, can they be verified? Dr. Eris's crystalline features had darkened to a deep, troubled blue. Some of the phenomena in their records correlate with anomalies we've detected at the edges of our space. Events we've dismissed as natural cosmic occurrences or sensor malfunctions. They could be fabricating these threats, suggested a Vortian representative, 6 eyes blinking nervously, creating a narrative to justify their military buildup and frighten us into compliance. Admiral Zora's skin had settled into a thoughtful gray. To what end? If conquest were their goal, why reveal themselves at all? Why not continue preparing in secret? The debate raged for hours, fracturing along unexpected lines. The traditional hawks fell silent, recognizing that conventional military action against beings who trained on Tartarus 7 would be suicidal. Those who advocated diplomatic isolation feared that ignoring the humans might leave the Alliance vulnerable to the very threats Rostova had described. A third faction emerged, cautiously suggesting that Alliance, however uncomfortable, might be the only logical path forward. "We've seen what they can endure," General Zeiler noted grimly. "If there are threats in this galaxy that they feel require such extreme preparation, perhaps we should listen." The decision, when it finally came, was pragmatic rather than idealistic. The Alliance would send a diplomatic delegation to meet with human representatives. They would verify the existence of these supposed cosmic threats, if possible, and explore the potential for cooperative security arrangements. They would not reveal the extent of their fear, nor how profoundly the discovery of humanity had shaken their civilization's foundational assumptions. 2 weeks later, a diplomatic vessel carrying General Zeiler, Admiral Zora, Dr. Eris, and a contingent of Alliance specialists approached the designated meeting point, a space station orbiting a neutral world near the borders of known space. The station itself was a revelation, constructed from materials that could withstand stellar radiation levels, with defense systems that could track and target objects moving at significant fractions of light speed. The human diplomatic party awaited them in a sparse, functional meeting chamber. At its head stood Commander Eva Rostova, now dressed in formal military attire that did nothing to soften her battle-hardened presence. Alongside her were other humans with similar bearing, each carrying the physical marks of survival in environments that should have killed them many times over. "Welcome to Outpost Sentinel," Rostova greeted them, her scarred face set in a neutral expression. "We appreciate your willingness to meet." The formalities were stiff, laden with the unspoken tension between species that had evolved along radically different paths. The Alliance representatives maintained their diplomatic protocols, elaborate introductions, statements of peaceful intent, expressions of mutual respect. The humans responded with blunt efficiency that bordered on impatience. "You've seen our training methods," Rostova said once the preliminaries concluded. "You know what we can endure. What you need to understand is why." She activated a holographic display at the center of the table, showing sensor readings and footage that corresponded with several of the cosmic anomalies from Kale's report. Alarmingly, these were matched with Alliance records of the same phenomena, event classified as unexplained but presumed natural. This incursion in the Cepheus sector 3 years ago, Rostova indicated. "Your records show it as a spatial disturbance of unknown origin. Our forces engaged with entities attempting to establish a dimensional bridgehead. We lost 200 personnel containing it." She showed case after case. Threats the Alliance had either missed entirely or misclassified, each countered by human intervention at terrible cost. "We've been fighting these battles alone because we had to," Rostova continued. "Humanity evolved in isolation, forced to become what we are through necessity. We'd prefer not to remain alone as the challenges escalate." General Zeiler studied the evidence with growing concern. "These incursions, they're increasing in frequency exponentially," confirmed one of the human scientists. "Our models project a major convergence event within the next decade. When it comes, it will affect the entire galactic arm, including all Alliance territories." The implications settled heavily on the Alliance delegation. If the humans were telling the truth, and the evidence was becoming difficult to dismiss, then the Alliance faced threats far beyond anything their peaceful expansion had prepared them for. But more disturbing was the realization that humanity had been fighting these battles silently, while the Alliance remained blissfully unaware of how close to extinction they might have come. "What exactly are you proposing?" Admiral Zora asked, her skin shifting between cautious yellow and interested green. "A mutual defense pact," Rostova replied without hesitation. "You have resources, manufacturing capacity, stable worlds, and population numbers we lack. We have experience fighting these threats, specialized forces trained for impossible environments, and defense technologies developed through necessity." She leaned forward, her scarred hands clasped before her. "Together, we stand a fighting chance. Separately, the mathematics are not in either of our favors." Hours of negotiation followed, punctuated by technical exchanges and strategic assessments. The humans were forthright about their capabilities and limitations, which only served to make their astronomical achievements more impressive. They had accomplished with brute force and evolutionary adaptation what other species had achieved through millennia of gradual technological development. By the time the preliminary agreement was drafted, an uncomfortable but necessary truth had emerged. The Alliance needed humanity's hardened defenders as much as humanity needed the Alliance's resources and stability. It was an alliance born of mutual necessity rather than shared values, a pragmatic partnership against cosmic horrors. As the Alliance delegation prepared to depart, General Zyler found himself face-to-face with Commander Rostova in a private moment. "Your people fear us," she observed matter-of-factly. "That's understandable. We fear ourselves sometimes." Zyler considered denying it, then opted for honesty. "You train on world that would kill our strongest soldiers in minutes. You treat death and suffering as teaching tools." "Yes, we find that concerning." Rostova's expression softened slightly, revealing a glimpse of something unexpected. Weariness, perhaps even regret. "We didn't choose to evolve as we did. Earth forced that path upon us. But perhaps our partnership can create a galaxy where such measures are no longer necessary, where children can grow up without learning to breathe poison or fighting gravity that crushes bones." "Is that really what you want?" Zyler asked, genuinely curious. "What we want is irrelevant," Rostova replied. "What we'll fight for is survival, yours as well as ours. The rest remains to be seen." As the Alliance vessel departed, General Zyler, Admiral Zora, and Dr. Eris stood silently on the observation deck, watching the human station recede into the distance. They had aligned themselves with beings whose training methods they found horrifying, whose capacity for violence and endurance defied comprehension. Yet, paradoxically, they felt a strange sense of security they hadn't before. "Are we making a mistake?" Dr. Eris whispered, her scientist's caution warring with the evidence she'd seen. "Perhaps," Admiral Zora admitted, her skin a complex swirl of colors reflecting her mixed emotions. "But consider the alternative. If those things they showed us are real, and they've been fighting them alone." General Zyler completed the thought. "Then perhaps monsters are exactly what we need to face the darkness ahead." The Alliance vessel accelerated to faster-than-light travel, carrying its leaders back to worlds that had never known the kind of hardship that forged humanity. They carried with them the seeds of a new interstellar order, one where the comfortable certainties of the past gave way to uncomfortable truths about what waited between the stars. And alongside them, emerging from the hellish crucibles of worlds like Tartarus 7, stood humanity, scarred, dangerous, and perhaps the only shield against horrors yet to come.